Chapter 35, A Temporary Reprieve. When I discharged from Corcoran, I caught the Amtrak train and met Vicky back in Salinas. We spent the night at the same hotel we stayed in the first time, but had no plans to stay in Salinas any longer than that. Smokey was supposed to have gotten out a couple weeks after me, but Monterey County picked up an assault case on him and were now going after him with gang enhancements that turned into a potential life case. The following day, me and Vicky drove to Bobby's house, picked up some of my clothes that he had stored for me, said our goodbyes, and headed back to Ukiah. Her dad ended up moving into his own place, so now it was just Vicky and her son, Rudy, living at the apartment. I spent the next month at home with Vicky, going to her doctor's appointments and trying to educate myself about lupus and how it was affecting her body. When Vicky gave birth to her son at the age of 18, the birth somehow triggered the lupus in her system that had, up until that point, been dormant. Her family had a history of lupus that skipped every other generation, and out of 2 brothers and 1 sister, Vicky happened to be the one who ended up with it. She had the internal form of lupus, which attacked some of the major organs, and in her case, it kept attacking her heart valves. The valves continued to degenerate to the point they had to be replaced through open heart surgery. She endured this procedure 4 times before I even met her. The first time, a pig valve was used. When that deteriorated, it was replaced with a cow valve. The doctors tried another pig valve the 3rd time and eventually implanted a mechanical valve. Now, almost 6 years later, the mechanical valve was showing signs of degeneration. It was imperative that I went to all her appointments to learn as much as possible about her condition. However, my brief time away from all the madness was short-lived, as the NF just wasn't about to let me get away that easily. Bubba and BJ contacted me through Bobby and said I needed to go to Salinas to assist them with the problem they were having with some of the Southsiders out there. The Sureños apparently shot at Bubba in front of Sophie's sisters, Nena's house, and now Nena was worried about them coming back. Nena lived there with 2 of Sophie's kids and her own 2 children, and obviously this caused her great concern. Bubba was lucky he didn't get hit, as they later joked that he looked like that scene from the Matrix movie when Keanu Reeves dodged bullets in slow motion. I couldn't understand why they didn't post up a couple youngsters outside her house, but this was Mateo's sister, and I didn't question it. It was one of those situations where I was called upon to protect a fellow C's relative, and I really couldn't offer up any viable excuses for not going. Vicky wanted to go with me, but I wouldn't let her go. This wasn't going to be a social trip, and I didn't want to take any chances of putting her in harm's way. When I got back to Salinas, I drove straight to Nena's house and was introduced to another homeboy who had come down from Tulare County. Supposedly, he was a close friend of Nena's, but I never met him before. After hearing about all the details of what transpired that night with Bubba, I jumped in my Explorer with the homeboy Louie from Tulare County that night and drove down to some apartments off of Natividad that was supposedly infested with Sureños. The neighborhood was known as the Chancla. We literally went head hunting for Sureños. The complex was small and only had 1 entrance to enter and exit, so we had to make sure we weren't driving into a trap ourselves. When we drove in, we didn't see anybody that looked like Sureños. But as we were getting ready to pull out, I noticed 2 individuals wearing Black Raider jerseys walk by and stop near a walkway. No Norteños lived in this complex, so on my mind, they had to be Sureños. When I first spotted them, I threw my car in reverse to get in a better position. The homeboy rolled his window down and got ready to take his shot. As I watched these guys walk by, I noticed that there were some kids on bicycles behind them. I grabbed Louie's arm and told him wait. Knowing how these kinds of situations always end up, I put my car in drive and took off. I wasn't going to take a chance of any kids catching a stray bullet and having something like that on my conscience. I spent the next 3 weeks posted up at Nana's house, walking from room to room, toting around a .357 in one hand and a .38 in the other. BJ showed up a few weeks later and I actually almost shot him by accident. I was holding the .38 and shot a hole in the couch due to its hairline trigger. When the gun went off, he jumped so high that I couldn't stop laughing. It would have been all bad if I would have hit him, but I still thought it was kind of funny. The Sureños never came back. However, we nearly avoided a disaster after Bubba, BJ, Louie, and I almost got pulled over. Bubba had a .44, BJ had a .50 caliber Desert Eagle, Louie had a .38, and I had the .357. We were driving around in Nana's Bronco looking for Sureños. When I pulled up to a stop sign on Ryder, we got lit up by an unmarked undercover Suburban Without hesitation, I flipped the bitch and floored it. The unmarked vehicle pursued me for a couple blocks, but once I entered in some of the more dense residential neighborhoods, they abandoned pursuit and let me go. A couple weeks later, Vicky told me she wanted me to come home, so I drove back to Ukiah. After the high-speed pursuit, I had seen enough anyway. Aside from all the drama that I experienced during these 3 fateful weeks, the worst part about going out there was being told that Corny and Pinky now wanted me to relocate to San Jose and get that regiment back on track. Romero Goose Garcia had just been indicted in the Black Widow investigation. My directives were clear-cut and laid out: to locate all of Goose's stragglers that had dispersed, get them back in line, and reestablish the regiment under my control.